Who's in this movie? Is it Brendan Fraser or is it Tom Cruise? Welcome back to WWH. It's Universal Monster Month. You know what that means. That's right, another review of a classic monster movie, and one of the earlier ones at that. Before we get going though, thank you for being here with us today. If you're new here, welcome. Please consider subscribing to the channel and checking out our Patreon page. We'd love to have you as a member of the WWH Universe. Also, go ahead and hit that like button and leave a comment down below and let me know if this is your first time here or if you're a return viewer. Today's spooky season subject is The Mummy, released in 1932, the year after Dracula and Frankenstein were released. It was directed by Karl Freund and stars Boris Karloff as Imhotep, this film's mummy. It was also remade 8 years later for a film that I think is actually better than this one. Of course, it was also reimagined several other times, such as in the Hammer Films era, and more well known in the 1990s with Brendan Fraser. That film spawned several sequels and even a series of spin-offs based around the Scorpion King, which starred The Rock before he became a huge action star. And the latest incarnation of the story was in 2017 with Tom Cruise. That film was supposed to be the start of the Dark Universe, which would have seen all of these classic movies remade, but due to the extremely poor reception, that idea was scrapped completely. I think the concept could have worked under the right circumstances, but this wasn't it. But we're not here to talk about all that, so let's head down to the ring to get this show underway. The film opens with a 1921 archaeological expedition in Egypt that is being led by Sir Joseph Wimple, and they find the mummy of an ancient Egyptian high priest, Imhotep. Further inspection of the mummy by Dr. Muller reveals that its viscera were not removed. Viscera essentially just means his organs. This, plus the signs of struggle, allows them to figure out that though Imhotep was wrapped like most mummies, he was buried alive. Also buried with Imhotep was a casket with a curse inscribed on it. Despite being warned by Dr. Muller, Sir Joseph's assistant, Ralph Norton, opens it and finds the Scroll of Thoth. His ignorance and disbelief causes him to translate the symbols and read it aloud. This starts an impromptu reverse casket match as Imhotep immediately wins and rises out of the coffin. This is just too much for Norton, and his mind completely snaps. He begins laughing hysterically as Imhotep walks away with the scroll. We learn later that Norton died, still laughing, in a straitjacket.
What is it? He went for a little walk. You should have seen his face.
10 whole years pass by, and Imhotep has now integrated himself into modern society, even adopting a new gimmick, that of Egyptian historian Ardith Bey. He reaches out to Sir Joseph's son Frank and Professor Pearson and shows them where to dig to find the tomb of the Princess Ankhsenamun. After locating the tomb, the archaeologists bring its contents to the Cairo Museum, and Ardith Bey has disappeared. Bey soon encounters Helen Grosvenor, a half-Egyptian woman who bears a striking resemblance to the princess. She has been staying with Dr. Muller recently.
Is anything the matter?
Bey falls in love with her, but so does Frank. Bey shows up, and Sir Joseph and Dr. Muller discover that he is actually Imhotep. Muller vows to destroy Bey, but he knows that he's just too strong right now.
If I could get my hands on you, I'd break your dried flesh to pieces. But your power is too strong.
He then urges Joseph to burn the scroll, but before he can accomplish that goal, Bey uses his magical powers to kill Joseph and hypnotize a Nubian to serve him and bring the scroll to him. After he receives the scroll, he then hypnotizes Helen to come to him, where he reveals that his horrific death was punishment for sacrilege. He attempted to resurrect the princess because he was in love with her, which was forbidden.
They broke in upon me and found me doing an unholy thing.
Bey believes that Helen is the reincarnation of Ankhsenamun, so he plans to kill, mummify, then resurrect her. Luckily, that doesn't happen, though. Frank and Muller come to her rescue, but are quickly immobilized by Bay's magical powers. Helen then somehow remembers her ancestral past life and asks the goddess Isis to come help her.
Oh, Isis, holy maiden, I was thy consecrated vestal. I broke my vows. Save me now. Teach me the ancient summons, the holy spells I've forgotten.
The statue of Isis then raises its arm and emits a flash of light that sets the scroll of Thoth ablaze. This breaks the spell, keeping Imhotep alive, causing him to turn into dust and just crumble onto the floor. Another example of the monster dying in most of the original Universal monster movies. Dr. Muller urges Frank to call Helen back to the world of the living as the scroll continues to burn, and they all lived happily ever after, or so I assume. I don't know, but something about this movie just doesn't do it for me. I absolutely think that the next incarnation of this story is so much better than this one, and I've seen this movie several times. I've tried to give it a chance, but I can't get into it. That's not a knock on anybody who worked on the film, I just didn't care for it. But just because I'm not a fan doesn't mean that there was nothing good about it. There are definitely some elements that work, and we'll look at those in just a moment, but first, we have to take a quick break, so stick around and we'll be right back with more action. If you are looking to save 20% off of your entire order from redcon1.com, look no further. I have a perfect deal for you. Use code AndrewDreamer at checkout to save 20% off your entire order. Go check out their website. They're going to have anything you could possibly want. Get some protein, some pre-workouts, some snacks, some t-shirts, anything you could possibly want for your everyday life or for your gym life, I promise you they will have. So go check out their website and use code AndrewDreamer to save 20% off of your entire order. We are back now, and it is time to head back down to the ring for more WWH action. My first positive for The Mummy, the performance by Boris Karloff. I mean, this guy was born to play monsters in movies. Whether it's the mummy gimmick or as Ardith Bay, he's a strong presence on screen, always. He makes you believe he's really a living mummy. His movements are stiff and, well, mummy-like. The makeup effects are also really good. Jack P. Pierce always brings his A-game no matter what film he's working on. The sets also look really good in my opinion. I'm trying to throw as many good things in here as I possibly can. And I also think that the basic idea of the story is really interesting. We've seen that it can be done very well. With that being said, let's look at the other side of the coin. The biggest negative I have for this movie is how much better this story was told only a few years later. It was more thought out, better made, and just more entertaining. Another thing, this movie is just boring and forgettable. Aside from the mummy and maybe Helen, everybody else just kind of fades into the background. I had a hard time keeping a track of who was who. Maybe that's just me, but all of the characters were so similar that I couldn't differentiate them in any way. Even Frank was always just kind of there. He didn't contribute to the story at all other than being the supposed love interest of Helen who brings her back to the real world at the end. I'm not a fan. And I didn't even mention that the runtime of this movie was a positive. And the reason that I didn't is because it didn't help this film at all. I'm not saying that it should have been longer, but I am saying that they should have done more with the runtime that they had. It honestly aggravates me how much missed opportunity there is with this movie. So I'm going to stop there, but let me know in the comments if you think I'm being too hard on this film. If you're a completionist and want to see all of the Universal monster movies, then check this out. Otherwise, I would suggest skipping this one and just watching The Mummy's Hand instead. But that's just my opinion. I'm just some guy on the internet. If you love this movie, I understand. And I didn't mean to offend you in any way, but it's just not for me. It's time to wrap up our show for today. If you're still watching, thank you for making it this far in the video. Subscribe if you haven't done that yet. Leave a like and a comment down below. Head over to Patreon and become a member of the WWH Universe. Consider being a part of this channel's continuous growth. And we're continuing to improve each and every time out as well. Next time on WWH, we'll be looking at the Phantom of the Opera, then finishing up Universal Monster Month with the Invisible Man rematch. So make sure you're looking out for those videos. But until then, my name is Andrew Dreamer, and this is Wrestling with Horror.